Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 481. Mei Xue Yan's reaction. The decision to sit under that tree had only been Mei Xue Yan's intuition. There was no specific reason for it. It was merely her Xian beast instinct. She had felt that there was something wrong with that place, that there was something strange about it. But she couldn't explain what was wrong and strange about it. I feel that the brat is becoming increasingly mysterious. Green Hunter was with her trusted elder sister now. So, she had let go of her suspicions for the time being. She felt an incomparable sense of security because she was in her elder sister's company. Therefore, it didn't matter to her who she was being followed by as long as she was with her elder sister. In fact, she wouldn't feel any fear even if it were the Emperor of the Heavens. She would still remain fearless and unafraid. Mysterious? Why do you say that? The expression on Mei Xue Yan's face didn't change one bit. She had merely frowned slightly. That's right. I heard that he had gone into a mad frenzy after we had left at the city's gates. He had used extremely cruel and bloody methods to stop those rumors. Then, he openly and blatantly sent his guards to one of Tianxiang's major families on the same afternoon, the Meng family. And his men plundered and seized everything the Meng family owned. Then, he killed the leaders of this entire episode even though they happened to be two of the most respected scholars of Tianxiang. He also killed over 30 other officials that same night. But Tianxiang's imperial family didn't do anything about it. He then went to the Donghua family the next day in order to discuss marriage. Discuss marriage? Green Hunter hadn't even finished speaking when she was interrupted by Mei Xue Yan. Discuss marriage? Whose marriage did he wish to discuss with the Donghua family? Mei Xue Yan's expression had become as cold as ice when she had spoken those words. Whose marriage? He obviously went to the Donghua family to discuss the marriage between Donghua Xiao Yi and him. The Snake King stared stunned at her elder sister. Oh. I thought it was about Jun Moxie's marriage to Guanqing Han. I was a bit shocked since I thought why he would go to the Donghua family regarding that marriage. Your speech was very unclear. Girl. Why didn't you explain that earlier? Mei Xue Yan rebuked as she looked at her. The Snake King's brain short-circuited for a moment. Why would he go to the Donghua family to discuss his marriage with Guanqing Han? Wouldn't that be ridiculous? How could elder sister think that? Is it too hard to think of this? What happened then? You've already given away the climax. So, there must be something interesting behind it, right? Mei Xue Yan asked dimly. The men got drunk. And a brother of Jun Moxie, Tang Yuan, was schemed against. In fact, he was pushed into a latrine pit. Elder sister, you don't know. That Tang Yuan is super fat. I looked at him. He must be at least 250 kilos. However, Jun Moxie had a flare-up at the Donghua family because of this matter. And he didn't even care for his relationship with the Donghua family since he forced his future in-laws to kill their relative in order to take revenge for his brother. He didn't care for his relationship. Mei Xue Yan was leisurely gazing at the transient clouds. She then said indifferently, "It seems they're done talking about that marriage." The Snake King was again left astonished. We've mainly come here for Jun Moxie's master. The refined pills from the sacred fruit are also on the roster. But why is elder sister concerned about the issue of Jun Moxie's marriage? It's a pity that your little sister hasn't found any tracks of Jun Moxie's mysterious master. I thought that Jun Moxie was bound to request his master when facing those huge disturbances. But I had never expected that this brat would deal with it on his own, and would genuinely end up resolving everything. Green Hunter frowned. Jun Xie certainly handled everything in a very unscrupulous and lawless manner. But it made me feel that he has an extremely powerful backer. And this backer is someone whom no one can mess with. Moreover, it seems that he'll appear anytime and anywhere this brat needs him to. Therefore, I believe that Jun Xie's backer is hiding inside the Jun family's residence. The Snake King came to a resolute conclusion and continued. Therefore, I had decided to follow Jun Xie. But that brat is very skilled. I had barely started following him from the aristocratic hall, but he sensed that I was following him. In fact, I lost his trail after 2 or 3 turns. The Snake King's face became red. But I had been gone for a long time. So I decided to return. However, I had barely covered half the way when I started to sense that I was being followed. And that feeling got more intense the moment I was flying over city walls. The person who was following me was extremely strong. But I didn't feel that he harbored any malice towards me. In fact, I could sense that aspect very clearly. The Snake King lowered her brows as she spoke this. She had finished speaking a long while ago, but there hadn't been any response from her elder sister. So she couldn't help but feel weird. She then looked at her side and saw that her elder sister's face was dull. But a complex luster was flashing in her eyes nonetheless. Mei Xue Yan's gaze was fixated on the ground at this time. In fact, it seemed as if she hadn't even heard her speak. The Snake King felt startled by this and followed her elder sister's gaze. But she didn't find anything strange. So she couldn't help but find that even stranger. What are you thinking, elder sister? Why are you acting so strange? Green Hunter. Let's talk frankly for a second. What would happen if we were to injure or kill Jun Xie? Mei Xue Yan was looking to the front. It seemed as if she was talking to thin air. Injure him? Kill him? The Snake King Green Hunter jumped scared. We can't do that, elder sister. Didn't I tell you that our Tianfa's sacred fruit is in the hands of that brat's master? We'll have no hope for ourselves if he decides to keep the fruit in case something happens to Jun Xie. Moreover, his master possesses extremely great strength. Our Tianfa forest is anyway going to face those 3 holy lands. So we can't afford to have another powerful enemy. You're right. Our Tianfa can't afford to have too many powerful enemies in these troubled times. But we still need to put pressure on Jun Xie. And that pressure should be enough to threaten the safety of his life. After all, he'll have to ask his master to come out if that happens. Isn't this what you also want? Jun Xie's master will never appear if he's able to settle every matter by himself. Mei Xue Yan replied slowly. Mei Xue Yan's words undoubtedly made sense. In fact, the method she had proposed was the most effective means they could use under these circumstances. But the Snake King still felt extremely baffled by this proposal. Elder sister acts strange whenever Jun Xie's name is mentioned. She wants to injure him if she's not already talking about killing him. And now she wants to exert huge pressure on him. Has that brat somehow managed to offend her? Green Hunter had even felt her elder sister's heart stir with anger when she had mentioned Jun Xie. She had sensed that Mei Xue Yan's mood had become chaotic. But the latter had forcefully suppressed it. Moreover, all the plans to torment Jun Xie while they were traveling from Tianfa had come from Mei Xue Yan. What's all this about? Okay. Elder sister, what sort of pressure should we put on him? It must be moderate in my opinion. It won't have any effect if it's too little. And it may have side effects if it's too much. After all, we're looking for that mysterious and skilled person at the end of the day. The Snake King asked with caution. I've determined one thing for sure. Jun Xie will invite a lot of people in a few days if my estimation is correct. He's going to hold a huge banquet. Then, the imperial officers will make an announcement to the entire world. They'll declare that Jun Wu has taken Guan Qinghan as an adopted daughter. That'll be an opportunity for us. Moreover, that Dugu Xiao had appeared in front of the city's gates with that big belly. So, the Jun and the Dugu family wouldn't want to delay the matter of their marriage. And they'll undoubtedly hold a large ceremony once these two are related by marriage. In fact, they'll at least get engaged very soon even if they don't get married right away. That's also an opportunity for us. Mei Xue Yan's beautiful eyes were usually filled with the arrogance of a hegemon. However, a cold light flashed in them as she said, isn't he being allowed to embrace two great beauties with a relaxed mind? Isn't he enjoying his great luck with beautiful women whilst his heart is at ease? Aren't things becoming too easy for him? How can something like this be allowed to happen in this world? That dirty brat doesn't deserve this. The Snake King felt that this was extremely preposterous. She thought, what is this? We had originally come here to draw support from Jun Moxie's master. Our aim wasn't to set ourselves against the master and disciple in hatred. But elder sister's proposal is directed against Jun Moxie's women. Does she intend to embarrass him? Is this how she wants to put pressure on him? But doesn't this look like a bit of jealousy? However, she absolutely wouldn't say it. She'd never dare to do it. She couldn't have imagined that Mei Xue Yan was thinking. You filthy brat. Our account from TNFA still hasn't been settled. And you're already taking a wife? You seem very pleased with yourself. Wait and see how I torture you. You go and prepare our meal. I'll sit here for a while. Mei Xue Yan spoke calmly as she looked up at the sky. The Snake King stood up. She hesitated a bit as she thought of something. But she didn't say anything. She eventually flew away like a gust of wind. However, she didn't even remotely feel that she was being followed at this time. The gentle mountain breeze continued to brush against Mei Xue Yan for a long time. She then suddenly muttered in a calm manner, You've been here for a long time. You've also heard our conversation. And I think that's enough. So, you should come out now. She had still been looking at the sky in a calm manner while she had spoken this. In fact, even her posture hadn't undergone the slightest of changes. Jun Moxie snorted coldly. This young master is using the yin-yang escape right now. So, he can walk uninhibited since no one can see through it. And neither can you. You think I'll come out just because you told me to? Who do you think you are to believe that you can spot me? I only require 1 second of free time when you leave this tree trunk. I'll trick you by quickly escaping into the Hongjun Pagoda when that time comes. Just you wait and watch. Jun Moxie had previously taken Mei Xue Yan to be a delicate and timid woman. However, he had now realized that she was an outstanding Xian expert with a cultivation that was much stronger than the Snake King's. This Mei Xue Yan was the only one who could be compared to the TNFA Forest's venerable Mei when it came to the aspect of strength. In fact, their strengths might not have differed by much. The TNFA Forest has another person with such a terrifying character. I must reassess TNFA Forest's strength because of this. However, Jun Moxie was confident that she wouldn't be able to find him since he was using the yin-yang escape. Therefore, he wasn't worried. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 482. Threatened you, so what? Mei Xue Yan waited for a while, but saw no sign of movement. So, she sneered and waved her hand. A strong wind silently blew out as a result. There were many tall and thick trees in the vicinity. In fact, they were so thick that it would require several people to fully encircle their girth. However, they started to tremble with a whooshing sound under the wave of her palm. Then, they started to crumble in silence. It started with the roots. And then, the trunk started to follow. The bottom of the trees started to transform into a pile of powder. In fact, the upper body of the trees continued to sink and turn into fine powder until the huge treetop had also been brought down. 8 lofty trees of that dense mountainous forest vanished within a moment. And they had been replaced by 8 piles of fine powder. They appeared like gray piles of ash. Each one of them was conical in shape. Each was around 3 meters in height. No sound had been issued from them during the process of transformation. It seemed like those 8 trees had never existed in that mountainous forest. Moreover, it seemed that these 8 piles of powder had remained there since antiquity. Jun Xie sucked cold air. What technique is this? She merely waved her hand in order to bring about such a huge transformation. This Mei Xue Yan is terrifyingly strong. Mei Xue Yan's white dress fluttered lightly at its edges as she insipidly said, Jun Xie, you still don't intend on coming out? Did you see that? Who in your Jun family can match the power I possess? I'll count to 3. I'll fly to Tianxiang City if you don't appear after that. And I'll kill Jun Xie and Jun Wuyi. I know you had once said that you don't like taking threats. But I'm threatening you right now. Your mysterious master may be my equal. But do you think that he'll be able to protect your Jun family his entire life? Can he protect everyone from me? Her eyes were apathetic as she looked up to the sky. Her red lips moved slightly as she said in a faint manner, 1. Jun Xie was still hiding in the tree. However, his mind was in a state of utter shock at the moment. How did she know that I'm the one who's hiding here? And how is she so confident about it? Jun Xie had genuinely felt very nervous when he had heard her call out his name. Mei Xue Yan had spoken the truth. She was skilled enough to kill anyone she wanted dead. In fact, even the 8 great masters wouldn't be able to stop her. He hesitated only to listen on as Mei Xue Yan continued in a faint tone. 2. She slightly raised her beautiful face, but remained gazing at the sky. She looked like an innocent young girl who was trying to count the stars. But the murderous intentions that were being exuded from her body were nothing short of being exceptionally resolute. It seems like you don't plan on coming out. Mei Xue Yan sighed. That's also good. I'll go and kill Jun Xie and Jun Wuyi. I hope there's still some time for you to stop it. Ah, you can stop this. Hurry up and go to your master for help. And I hope he makes it in time. She stood up after she had spoken this. Her face filled with killing intention, and the temperature of her surroundings suffered a dramatic drop. Her body then flashed and transformed into a white line in the sky. She had already crossed over 60 meters in 1 second. She was headed towards Tianxiang City. Then suddenly, stop! Jun Xie shouted from behind her. Mei Xue Yan stopped and slowly turned around. She then saw that a youngster was standing tall and straight where she had been sitting a moment ago. He was looking at her. His gaze was cold and sharp. As expected, it's you. It is you. Mei Xue Yan's lips curled into an ice-cold smile. She gently tucked her hair behind her ears as she softly floated down. She then walked back in a slow and leisurely manner. How were you certain that it was me? I'm sure that my master's technique doesn't have any flaws. No one can see through it. Jun Moxie didn't intend to hide matters since he had already shown himself. So, he sat down where Mei Xue Yan was previously seated. He then grinned. It's still warm here, my ass feels very comfortable. Truly very comfortable. Mei Xue Yan became cold. Her expression was fierce as she glared wide-eyed. But the depths of her eyes were brimming with traces of embarrassment as she lightly spoke. You told me that yourself. I told you myself. Jun Moxie was baffled by this. Your secret technique is precisely as exceptional as you say it is. Perhaps there's no one in this age and world who can see through it. But the uniqueness of that technique is a giveaway. I had observed your moves when you were fighting Xiao Buyu. Everyone knows that your moves are exceptional and ever-changing. In fact, they can't even determine where you are. You're suddenly at the left, or at the right, or at the front or at the back. But I noticed that your techniques have already transcended the basic laws of the mortal body. That's because your corporeal body would go into some exceptional form every time you vanished. So, it would seem like you had disappeared. And you weren't merely hiding either. Nor were you concealing yourself at a great speed. I'm sure about this much. She smiled faintly. I can't track the Snake King even if I use my entire strength. That's because her innate skill comes from the heavens. No one can ever track her. However, someone was able to follow without revealing themselves. I believe that only your master's disciples are capable of achieving this with the help of the techniques that he had passed on. No one else can do this. The Snake King said that she had sensed someone following her. And she wasn't able to find who it was. However, that was enough to ascertain that you were this mystery pursuer. After all, your master wouldn't be bored enough to do something like this. Mei Xue Yan looked at Jun Moxie in a calm manner. And it turned out that my guess was correct. Why did you threaten me if you had guessed that it was me? Do you know what you said has already crossed that bottom line for me? You must know that every individual who has crossed that bottom line has paid a terrible price for their mistake. And nobody is an exception to that. Jun Moxie was feeling very gloomy. So, he spoke in a bad mood as well. That wasn't a threat. My words were very likely to come true. That's because I would have killed those two if you hadn't appeared. Mei Xue Yan continued. I wasn't joking with you. I don't need to use threats when it comes to killing. Killing isn't a big deal for me. Are you forcing me? Jun Moxie's expression became extremely sharp as he gave a grim look to Mei Xue Yan. He then spoke. Are you forcing me to oppose you? Do you think you can trifle with me? Mei Xue Yan laughed loudly at first. Then, she looked at Jun Moxie in an arrogant manner as her sleeves floated like a cloud. Her expression was one of disdain. You oppose me? I don't understand where you get such confidence from. Did you get it from your imaginary master? Jun Moxie's expression was of a man who had seen a beautiful empress, but still wasn't interested in her. He spoke slowly and coldly. He didn't hold back. A real man will only use his own strength. He won't rely on anyone else's. But, Mei Xue Yan, do you think that I won't be able to kill you because you're a woman of considerable martial skill and unmatched magnificence? Or do you think that I won't kill a woman? Is that so? Mei Xue Yan tilted her head slightly. Her snow-white cheeks seemed translucent in the sunlight. One look at her would leave any man to believe that he was having an unreal dream. Men and women are nothing more than husks of skin to me. You look very pretty right now. But you'll become a mere pile of bones after your death. And this young master has no interest in a pile of bones. Jun Moxie's body emitted a demonic aura. His glare slowly became like a sharp sword or a keen knife. He was looking at Mei Xue Yan with a gaze that reeked of viciousness. Then he spoke in an unhurried manner. Woman, it doesn't matter who you are, or what kind of robust strength you possess. You must remember one thing: you must never cross my bottom line. Otherwise, you'll regret it. You'll have to pay a price you can't afford. In fact, you won't even be able to imagine it. Are you threatening me now? Mei Xue Yan looked up. She didn't have any expressions of anger on her face as she asked in a faint voice. In fact, she even found this slightly funny. After all, Jun Moxie's strength was like that of an ant in front of her. But he had still dared to threaten her. Threatening you? I don't think I was threatening you. My words were very likely to come true. Anyway, so what if I've threatened you? Jun Moxie sneered. What will you do about it? Or are you like me now that you can't tolerate threats? Jun Moxie had landed this counterattack without batting an eye. It was the same threat. Mei Xue Yan had threatened Jun Moxie, and that had made him angry. So, Jun Moxie threatened her in return. But that left Mei Xue Yan to feel very humiliated. After all, the massive disparity in their identities didn't allow her to be threatened by someone like Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie's voice had barely faded when he saw the snow-white image flash in front of him. Her palm swept with a whoosh as it came towards him. It was aimed at his cheek. The air also echoed with a whoosh sound. It couldn't be avoided. He had never expected that Mei Xue Yan would possess such great speeds. Jun Moxie's expression suddenly became cold. But he didn't try to dodge. Instead, he merely struck back with his hand. He was up against the most beautiful woman in the world. However, he had shown her no mercy. Ha! Mei Xue Yan looked upwards as Jun Moxie's palm brushed past her cheek. However, Jun Moxie was also able to avoid her strike as a result. The two of them had moved in a similar manner. Both of them had moved their legs backwards. Mei Xue Yan's leg moved like lightning as it kicked Jun Moxie's knee. Jun Moxie's right leg moved similarly as he aimed a kick at Mei Xue Yan's dantian. Mei Xue Yan's hand circled above at the same time. Her fingers then curled into hooks as she grabbed at Jun Moxie's eye. Jun Moxie's fingers also turned into an eagle's claw as he grabbed his target. But his target was Mei Xue Yan's throat. Those two experts had started fighting to vent the anger they had been accumulating inside. They were tangled together, and neither was willing to give in. Jun Moxie didn't have a choice. After all, he knew that his strength as well as the level of his Xian Qi was far inferior to that mysterious woman's. Therefore, he could only resort to using such a method. However, Mei Xue Yan unexpectedly realized that she was coming up short. And that made her ponder. A woman would always be at a disadvantage in a close-fisted fight. Bang! The two fighters flew back at the same time. Jun Moxie staggered back a step and stood still. But Mei Xue Yan's beautiful face had turned pale in anger. You're a very ruthless man at heart, Jun Moxie. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 483. Fights Mei Xue Yan. These two had launched attacks on each other a moment ago. Mei Xue Yan's attacks had been very fierce. But they weren't fatal for Jun Moxie in any way. Those attacks would have at most crippled him even if they had struck their target. Moreover, her attacks had provided for a lot of leeway. However, each one of Jun Moxie's attacks had been fatal. The hunter had become the hunted in a split second. Mei Xue Yan had already been brought to the gates of hell twice. In fact, she had been forced to activate her Xian Qi since she was left stunned by the sharpness of Jun Moxie's attacks. I had never expected that this seemingly angle-like handsome youngster would unleash fatal attacks on me even though my strikes weren't intended to kill him. We're on the same boat. But you won't get another opportunity. Jun Moxie smiled faintly and coughed. He had made a mistake a moment ago. But this thrilling exchange had left him fearful in his heart. After all, he had just faced 3 or 4 instances where he could have been crippled. I would have been doomed to lay here forever if I had shown any leniency towards her. She would have crippled my legs and blinded my eyes. I would have had to live the rest of my life in darkness. This beautiful woman is very dangerous. I'm not going to let you off either. But let's not use our Xian Qi. Let's have a fair fight to see who emerges the victor. Mei Xue Yan snorted and stretched her body. She had been renowned for her dexterity even before she had become a beast king. In fact, her speed and dexterity was the one and only of its kind even amongst the millions of Xian beasts in the forest. However, she had found herself at a disadvantage when she had exchanged blows with that brat. In fact, she had been forced to use her powerful Xian Qi to shake him off. This was unimaginable for her. And it was also extremely humiliating. I must redeem my honor. There's no turning back on this. This was no longer a battle of anger. It was one of honor now. Jun Moxie wasn't even remotely timid in front of his extremely powerful enemy. He lightly chuckled as the expression in his eyes became ice-cold. He was as calm as the snow, and as silent as the glaciers. But Jun Moxie moved into action the instant Mei Xue Yan's body showed the slightest trace of movement. The young master's long and jet-black hair suddenly spread out behind him as he charged forward with vigor. This gave rise to a crackling sound. But this sound hadn't even gotten the time to subside, and the two opposing figures had already become entangled. The two individuals had become entangled so closely that they seemed inseparable. Their figures seemed to form one white image. Pop-pop sounds echoed everywhere. And no one could tell how many strikes each of these two individuals had produced within this split second. This kind of close-quarter hand-to-hand fight is dictated by a person's reflexes and agility. However, the fight between these two couldn't be considered one of life and death anymore. Instead, this hand-to-hand combat was only a means for these two individuals to vent their anger at each other. Mei Xue Yan was gloomy, very gloomy. She was so gloomy because Jun Moxie had dared to threaten her. Moreover, he was merely an insignificant human who hadn't even reached the spirit Xian realm. She didn't care much about the threat itself. The thing was that Jun Moxie had nothing to rely on, apart from those pills from the sacred fruit. He obviously hadn't told her this, but she knew it nonetheless. Therefore, Mei Xue Yan felt that she had suffered a loss. Moreover, that loss couldn't be absorbed. And this had only made her more sullen. But it didn't matter how gloomy she felt about it. After all, she'd be compelled to submit to that threat since she didn't have a choice. And how could Jun Moxie not feel gloomy? He was equally gloomy. In fact, he was feeling extremely gloomy. Jun Moxie was accustomed to being at an advantage. He was used to having the upper hand over others. He had fiddled with the great masters even when his strength had been feeble in the past. He had the beast kings of Tianfa in the palm of his hands. How could someone so outstanding accept someone else's threats? However, he had no choice but to come out after Mei Xue Yan had issued that threat. He couldn't ignore that threat. He couldn't refuse to care about it. And that was because this threat had been issued against two of his closest relatives. He had only known those two relatives in both of his lives. These were the two people he cared the most about. The young master couldn't replace those two. Consequently, he felt that he had suffered a loss. So, he was extremely and equally sullen. But it didn't matter how gloomy he felt about it. After all, he'd be compelled to submit to that threat since he didn't have a choice. The mood of these two entangled fighters was quite similar despite the difference in their reasons. And both of them were trying their best to beat the other, and neither was willing to accept defeat. In fact, they were ready to get beat up, but they weren't prepared to give up on beating up the other person. Any other pair would have smiled and called it quits by now. However, these two were going toe for toe, and weren't willing to accept defeat. Both of them had suffered hidden losses even though they were evenly matched. But both of them still believed that they could win. However, they were still using their strikes to venerate each other in a way when it came to it. After all, they wanted to see who would fall first, and who would laugh in the end. Moreover, these two were bound to have a cooperative relationship because of the sacred fruit of Tianfa, and because of Tianfa's matter with the Holy Lands. But the outcome of this battle would decide the relative positions of these two people. And it would also decide how much weight their words would carry. Therefore, the two of them were employing their unique skills to the pinnacle in this hand-to-hand fight. Jun Moxie had a custom that he would always put his entire effort. It didn't matter how weak the enemy was. He always wanted his first move to be such that he wouldn't need to make a second one the same way a lion puts his full strength behind every pounce whenever he attacks a rabbit. After all, the ability to kill the enemy was the best way to protect oneself. He had always practiced that golden rule. In fact, this was the greatest experience of the king of assassins. However, Mei Xue Yan was being very tactful. And her tact was allowing her to repel Jun Moxie's attacks. Then, she'd move to counterattack. In fact, Mei Xue Yan would even manage to counterattack in between strikes if Jun Moxie attacked with a closely linked series of maneuvers. Consequently, their fight continued to become increasingly intense. The speed of these two figures became increasingly fast as the fight dragged on. It was like two tornadoes were winding together. In fact, it was unclear as to who was who. The Snake King had stealthily returned to the vicinity by now. However, this scene had left her stunned. There are many kinds of Xian beasts in Tianfa forest. In fact, it's full of strange things. But no one has ever been able to match Elder Sister's agility. Even the renowned Long Crane and I won't be able to match Elder Sister's moves despite teaming up against her. And this brat is only a mere human. But he's somehow a match for Elder Sister. In fact, some of his attacks are even pushing her back. How can this be possible? What is he? Mei Xue Yan was becoming increasingly gloomy. But this gloom was different from the one she had felt some time ago. And that was because this one had sourced from the threat of Jun Moxie's skill set. This brat is very fierce. Every move and every stance of this brat is fatal. Moreover, his attacks never land at the place he initially makes it seem like they would. It doesn't matter how well I dodge. And it doesn't matter how sharp my counterattacks get, this brat always figures the spot that's most vulnerable to a fierce counterattack in advance. However, the fact that had left her speechless was that he didn't care that his opponent was a woman, and that too an extremely beautiful woman. Moreover, he was entirely indifferent to whether the areas targeted by his attack were taboo or not. He didn't care whether he attacked her guts, chest, abdomen, eyes, or throat. Instead, he was prepared to attack every place which would leave his opponent to worry. His moves were fierce and crafty. He would attack important joints of the body in case he wasn't trying to land a fatal blow. Mei Xue Yan knew that even a great master would feel extreme pain if they weren't careful and were struck by his moves in return. Even I won't be an exception. How can he be this skilled? Mei Xue Yan had realized one thing while fighting Jun Moxie: each of his moves had only one purpose. And that purpose was to kill his enemy. Humans may have never liked the Xian beasts. However, such a degree of fierceness was still very rare. But Jun Moxie was displaying it right now. Mei Xue Yan was confident that her innate agility was much greater than that of Jun Moxie's when it came to the subject of raw skills. But Jun Moxie's fighting style had been vicious from the start. And he had also been using mean tricks in addition to his viciousness. Therefore, it was becoming somewhat difficult for her. That was because he could attack her while defending his vital points. It was like he was a hedgehog. She couldn't pick a spot to strike him at. His attack and defense fit in very seamlessly. In fact, it seemed as if he could see where the openings in his defense would arise when he would launch an attack. So, he would correct them in advance. In fact, he would secure those spots before he'd even make a move. Therefore, that opening would turn into a trap if Mei Xue Yan were to attack it. In fact, it would turn into a fatal trap for her. It was a terrifying tactic, a perfect move. Mei Xue Yan had faced against innumerable enemies over the course of her lifetime. But she had never seen such a fierce person. He was very clear about his advantages, and even clearer about his weaknesses. And he would attack even more sharply whenever he noticed an opening in the enemy's defense. This guy is a monster. I could hit him twice. But I would fail to hit any of his crucial parts. Well, I at least wouldn't be able to strike the parts that would cause him any serious damage. However, he would easily be able to strike me during the time I'd strike him twice. And his strikes would certainly leave me in a very uncomfortable position afterwards. He would pay no attention if I were to strike him twice. He could endure it. But his return attacks would be fatal for me. In fact, the most useless of his attacks would render me incapable of fighting back. I could obviously crush his entire body if I were to even strike his toes in case I was using my proper strength. In fact, it wouldn't matter even if he were to use his full strength to defend. But I had said that we shouldn't use our Xian Qi in this fight when we had started. Don't tell me that someone of my status would have to go back on my word against this brat. Mei Xue Yan didn't know that this was very unpleasant for young Master Jun as well. Jun Moxie was whining inside. This woman is too much. And I don't mean that for her body alone. She's tough mentally and physically. Her agility skills are also formidable. It's like she's a fish that has been dipped in oil. She's so slippery that she doesn't stay in my hands. So, how am I going to hit her? Suddenly, a divine flash appeared in Jun Moxie's mind in the midst of fighting. He then withdrew and shouted, "You were the one who was scheming against me throughout the journey from the southern heaven city?" Mei Xue Yan's cold and beautiful face didn't undergo any change of expressions. In fact, she charged in like a whirlwind when he retreated. She then showered him with 19 fists, 34 palms, 13 elbow strikes, and 30 kicks. She even jeered as she unleashed those attacks. "You're realizing that now? You're indeed very slow of thought. Did you like the taste I gave you during the trip? Was it memorable?" Jun Moxie's expression became calm as a dark light flashed in his eyes. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 484. Takes advantage and suffers losses. That return journey from Southern Heaven City was the most humiliating experience of both his lives. The name Evil Monarch had always stirred fear in the hearts of everyone in his previous life. Consequently, no one had dared to mess with him like this. And no one had dared in this world either. Those sullen situations and humiliations had forced Jun Moxie to sneak into the Hongjun Pagoda from time to time. In fact, he had been forced to train in hiding. His strength had increased by a huge degree because of that. But Jun Moxie still felt that he had been forced into doing that. After all, that wasn't of his own initiative. Therefore, Jun Moxie had wanted to get back at his perpetrators, but he had never figured out the identity of the people who were messing with him. However, he had already identified the Snake King Green Hunter. And then, he had seen Mei Xue Yan. Moreover, he had also assessed Mei Xue Yan's frightening strength over the course of this close-quarter combat. Then, Mei Xue Yan had admitted to those mischiefs. Consequently, he had finally determined that this cold woman had been behind everything. Jun Moxie gave a long roar. He ignored Mei Xue Yan's charge. He pivoted, soared high, and flipped backwards to retreat. But he then began to change directions in a mysterious manner in order to dodge her attacks. He changed his direction about 5 or 6 times, and came close to Mei Xue Yan amidst her attacks. However, his body suddenly dropped. "Okay, girl. Let me teach you a lesson if that's the case. Let me also make you experience the feeling of being played with. Let's see if you enjoy it. Let's see if this turns out to be a fond memory for you. Your Xian strength is much superior to mine. But you've set the condition of not using Xian strength in your arrogance. We've got quite the rivalry between us. And setting this condition was as good as asking for a thrashing. You must know that I'm a proud and merciless man. I won't show any leniency even if you're a girl. I'm going to destroy you." Mei Xue Yan suddenly felt that the fight's intensity had increased. In fact, this massive increase in pressure had begun to suffocate her to some extent. Jun Moxie's body had somewhat fallen. However, he still launched an attack from this position, and let his right foot loose. His right foot was aimed at her throat, but his left foot had also been sent to attack. Moreover, his left foot was aimed at the lower female parts of her body. "That's shameless. You're despicable." Mei Xue Yan's face became cold as her body leaned forward. Her right hand moved like lightning in order to chop at Jun Moxie's left leg. But she realized that she was chopping at empty air. Meanwhile, Jun Moxie's hands turned into fists. They then made a whistling sound in the wind. Mei Xue Yan twisted her waist back and moved forward to get the advantage. Then, her knee ferociously charged towards Jun Moxie's abdomen. There was a bang as the two fighters' knees collided. Mei Xue Yan's body retreated an inch. However, hers and Jun Moxie's knees had remained motionless between them. Suddenly, there was a strange movement below Jun Moxie's knee. Then, his knee somehow inverted, and a kick flew towards Mei Xue Yan's thigh. The young master's knees were raised. However, he had managed to land this kick even though his right heel was facing upwards. Moreover, his calves had also gone upwards in a similar fashion. This was extremely abnormal. It simply violated the laws of nature. It was important to know that one couldn't assume this posture unless the bones of the leg had broken or shattered. However, Jun Moxie had somehow employed this posture to attack. Mei Xue Yan had profound battle experience. However, she couldn't help but become startled when she saw this. And her body quickly retreated in a daze. But Jun Moxie quickly raised his lowered head and directed it upwards to slam into her forehead. Mei Xue Yan cursed, "You've got balls," as her white palm glittered beautifully while moving towards his forehead. This strike didn't contain her xian qi. However, this strike would easily split the young master's forehead into smithereens if it were to land. However, Jun Moxie's hair band suddenly burst open with a crack. His long and jet-black hair became as straight as arrows. The hair then resembled millions of sharp needles as they turned towards Mei Xue Yan's upper body to pierce it. Even hair could be used to injure one's opponents. However, this wasn't the end of Jun Moxie's attack. One of his shoulders leaned away from his body. In fact, it seemed as if it had dislocated from his body as he shrugged it to block Mei Xue Yan's left palm. This change had happened very suddenly and unexpectedly. Mei Xue Yan had calculated very kind of scenario. However, she realized that this strange attack was enough to end this fight. After all, she didn't wish to be pierced by those needle-like strands of hair. She lightly breathed out as her body faced upwards. Then, she quickly rose upwards and retreated backwards. These two movements had been completed in a blink of an eye. However, Jun Moxie's hands came like thunder and struck at her soft bosom as this happened. Mei Xue Yan was startled by this and cried out in anger. In fact, she was unable to adhere to the restriction of not using xian qi anymore. And her beautiful body rocketed skywards as she let out a cold snort in anger and shame. Jun Moxie only felt his palm touch something silky, soft, and plentifully elastic. In fact, he wasn't able to beckon enough strength to injure the enemy for a moment. However, Mei Xue Yan's body was already in the midst of moving upwards. His hands were pasted against her chest a moment ago. So, his hands opportunely moved towards her abdomen because of her upwards motion. However, he felt like they had slid into a canyon from the high mountains, from hills to plains. Moreover, this road between the mountains and the plains had been a very comfortable one. And this journey had left him with an indescribable feeling, like he was caressing something satin and warm. Jun Moxie couldn't help himself as his hands instinctively moved to a certain area of her body. Then, he instinctively kneaded. However, this kneading motion nearly made the rapidly ascending Mei Xue Yan fall down. It felt like he was kneading cotton. Moreover, it was plentiful and fine cotton. The youngster couldn't help but blurt out, "Nice." The quickly ascending Mei Xue Yan suddenly felt a sense of huge loss. She then fell down from the sky. The weather in the sky also became dark. She had remained pure ever since she had taken human form. In fact, most people didn't even know that she was a female. But this lecture had ruined that. Mei Xue Yan wanted to burst with rage. The entire xian strength stored in her body exploded in all directions and brought about a crazy pressure. The entire sky was filled with thunder as a result. In fact, It seemed as if the end of the world was rushing towards Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie jumped startled at this sudden change. This woman's strength was so great. None of the experts I've faced in the past can match this Mei Xue Yan. Jun Moxie saw that this terrible attack was descending unto him. And he knew that it would be a fatal strike. Therefore, he shouted in a moment of desperation, "Stop! You've lost. And yet you don't admit defeat. Do you have no shame?" That terrible attack stopped when he said those words. Mei Xue Yan's face was brimming with murderous intentions as she landed right in front of him. She was looking at him in a way that made it seem as if she was near ready to turn him into mincemeat. Her eyes were full of a murderous rage, but her face was blush red from ear to ear. Her previous immortal-like elegant and tranquil countenance had disappeared. It had vanished altogether. Instead, it had been substituted by the expressions of an angry and embarrassed young girl. In fact, she was seething in anger. But Jun Moxie was in a good mood. The expressions on his face were those of decency and earnest. "Young Mei, victory and defeat have already been decided. I won by a fluke. So I must apologize to Young. Also, it's late now. So I must bid you farewell. Are you still haggling at that insignificant matter of victory and defeat? Now that it comes to it, this brat acts like a hoodlum and plays with me. You just want to take advantage. Grope ass. And leave?" Mei Xue Yan had already forgotten the real purpose of the fight by now. She felt so ashamed that it seemed as if she had been pushed into a sewer. And that had resulted in her bizarre rage. Victory and defeat has been determined? How has it been determined? And how come I don't know about it? You think you can walk away after doing something so cheap? This statement was proof that Mei Xue Yan had truly lost her head. It was important to know that Mei Xue Yan was a peerless power. She was open and honest, and she would never try to cover up for her defeat. But the circumstances were quite different now. The strangely pleasant sensation she had felt when her chest had been kneaded was still lingering in her mind. In fact, her heart had been left to pound and stir by that unfathomable feeling. She felt as if her entire body had started to heat up with a fever. She wanted to rid herself of that feeling of embarrassment and shame. So she raised her hand and yelled, "Let's see how you escape from me now." The world cage. Young Master Jun's face had a serious look on his face. However, his heart had been yelling with satisfaction. Awesome, so wholesome. Hatred must be avenged. However, his hatred had been avenged with an extra rate of interest applied. Therefore, he was secretly feeling pleased with himself. However, this was when his bodily movements came to a sudden stop. Even his spirit sense had been sealed off. Feck. He wasn't unfamiliar with that so-called world cage. This technique was the only one which could suppress him successfully in this world. In fact, he couldn't even cheat and escape to the Hongjun Pagoda once under its effect. He had suffered this secret method at the hands of Tianfa Forest's venerable Mei. This woman can also use this technique. Shit. He didn't need much else to explain his predicament. In fact, this realization had come to Jun Moxie's mind in an instant. Even calling it a spark of electricity or a spark from a flit wouldn't be an exaggeration. Consequently, any other ideas that the young master's mind had been thinking suddenly came to a screeching halt. However, one couldn't blame him for not thinking of anything at this time. After all, Mei Xue Yan's fists and legs had started to rain down on him without mercy. Jun Moxie was only thinking, "This is the same as tyrannizing me." Bang! He was punched in the eye. Bang! He was hit again. Bang! His posterior had been turned into a sandbag. Bang! His back, thighs, shoulders, chest, nothing was spared. Jun Moxie floated in the air like a dead leaf during autumn. He moved up and down, but didn't land on the ground. The various bangs were echoing like drumbeats. He didn't even get any time to recover. He had been struck 1,000 times in a blink of an eye. And his eyes now resembled a panda's. His head had become swollen. As for his posterior, even a naked eye could see how fast it was swelling. Bang! The young master finally fell to the ground. In fact, he had dropped on all fours. He was visibly in a very difficult situation. Then, Mei Xue Yan's slender foot stamped heavily on the young master's chest. She then looked down arrogantly, smirked in anger, and asked with the pleased countenance of a victor, "Who is the victor in this fight?" Mei Xue Yan had panted faintly as she had spoken those words. So, her chest had slightly moved up and down. After all, the strikes she had delivered a moment ago had stifled her breath. Moreover, she had refrained from using her qi while fighting hand-to-hand for so long, and that had drained her body's physical strength. Therefore, it would be a lie to say that she wasn't tired. She was very tired, but it had been worth it. After all, she had avenged her hatred. In fact, his hatred had been avenged with an extra rate of interest applied. Therefore, she was happy. She was very satisfied. Mei Xue Yan's mind felt rejuvenated at the moment. However, she would obviously need to undo the world cage while interrogating Jun Moxie. Otherwise, how would that boy speak? But Mei Xue Yan had made a mistake, a grave mistake. She had been too careless. She shouldn't have undone the world cage. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 485. Assaults Mei Xue Yan indecently. The world cage was the technique Jun Moxie was most afraid of. In fact, it was perhaps the only thing he was afraid of. However, Jun Moxie would be like a dragon returning to the ocean in case the fetters of this world cage were removed. Perhaps he'd be like the tiger that had returned deep into the mountains. And he would never give her a second chance to do this. Mei Xue Yan's seemingly slender right foot was many tons heavy. It seemed like an entire mountain was pressing down on Jun Moxie's chest. She retracted the world cage once she finished talking. And Jun Moxie suddenly disappeared the instant this happened. Consequently, only thin air remained there the moment he disappeared. Mei Xue Yan was feeling very complacent at this moment. However, she suddenly felt emptiness under her foot, and lost balance as a result. Who was this Mei Xue Yan? She would have adjusted her posture if she had gotten a single second to react. But she didn't get that opportunity in this instance. A man's foot was raised the moment she lost her footing. How could she have thought that the person she had pinned to the ground would turn the tables in this manner? Consequently, she fell to the ground in a state of astonishment. And the sturdy and muscular body of a man also landed above hers. Her right foot was somehow raised to land next to her face as this happened. And her left foot ended on the other side of her face. In fact, she had become a rather unconventional horse that was lying belly up on the ground. Then, crisp, pop. Pop. Pop sounds echoed in the vicinity. Any outsider would feel that these crisp sounds were being made actions of catcalling. The beautiful Mei Xue Yan couldn't think of one part of her body that wasn't hurting in the moment. Moreover, Her fleshy posterior had already been beaten thousands of times in the blink of an eye. She had settled her debts with this man a moment ago. Therefore, she had been feeling very pleased with herself. However, it seemed as if the tables had been overturned once again. Mei Xue Yan became violently mad. In fact, she was unable to control her fury anymore. Her eyes reddened as she shouted in anger, "World CA! I'll show you the world. I'll crumble your world." Mei Xue Yan suddenly felt her mouth go warm. Then, the fervent breath of a man affixed itself to her lips. Consequently, her lips were sealed off the moment she was about to unleash her attack. She was pinned to the ground at this time. The strong body of a man was pressing down on hers. Moreover, her legs were raised above her head. In fact, she was literally lying on the ground in splits. Consequently, her lips had no choice to meet his. Oh God! She wanted to struggle and break free with everything she had. But this was when she felt an extremely nimble and greasy tongue slipping into her mouth. In fact, this tongue turned out to be so greasy that it somehow slipped into her sandalwood-like mouth by force. However, this was instinctual. This had been purely instinctive on Jun Moxie's part. After all, he had accidentally kissed the fragrant lips of such a beautiful woman. Therefore, their sweet and wonderful taste had transmitted back to his nervous system. Consequently, his tongue had decided to move in a spontaneous fashion. But it wasn't intentional in any way. Mei Xue Yan suddenly felt as if her head was becoming dizzy. She fluttered about at her wits' end for a moment. In fact, she even stopped struggling to some extent. However, this moment of hesitation didn't last long. In fact, it was perhaps 1,000th of a second. Then, Mei Xue Yan willed herself to resist the young master's special offensive. She then breathed out and slashed her hands in order to get out of this space. The world cage was put into effect once again. However, it was a pity that she felt her body becoming light right before she used the world cage. Jun Moxie had disappeared yet again. She had again suffered a massive loss. And no wonder medicine could cure the effects of this. Mei Xue Yan stood up with a whooshing sound. She circled around 10 times in the blink of an eye. The lady went frantic as she searched everywhere for any sign of Jun Moxie. But that was when a foot suddenly appeared out of nowhere and kicked her delicate and beaten posterior. That kick made young Lady Mei stagger forward. In fact, she nearly fell down. She became extremely angry as a result. There was a bang sound as the power of her entire body exploded everywhere to protect her. Mei Xue Yan had suddenly recalled that she could use her Xian strength to protect her body. Jun Moxie was in the midst of raising his leg for another attack while being in a state of invisibility. However, that powerful blast sent him flying away. It could be said that his stealth technique wasn't a perfect measure for every scenario. Jun Moxie! Mei Xue Yan roared out. Her face had quickly reddened to the extreme. She could feel that her posterior was painfully swelling up in a very rapid pace. However, her face was clearly more heated up. In fact, she felt as if it would burst into flames. "Come out, you brat! Come out if you have guts!" Mei Xue Yan continued to roar. The Snake King was hiding in the underbrush. Her face was covered in colors of shock. Her eyes were filled with them too. Dang! I haven't run into a demon, right? What did I just see? A man was philandering with elder sister a moment ago. He was behaving in an immoral manner with her. He even kissed her. Good heavens! I'm not dreaming. Am I? Jun Xie gnashed his teeth while he remained in hiding. He was also caressing his round posterior since it had become sore. That hurt very badly. Girl. You loathsome girl. Try becoming smug again. Try beating my ass again. The tables have turned. You got a taste of retribution this time, didn't you? Mei Xue Yan's intentions have been very obvious from the start. She only wanted to teach me a lesson. She had never intended to kill me. Why else would she have only given me a violent beating when I was trapped in that world cage? After all, only half of her strength was enough to kill me when she had gone into that maddened rampage. Therefore, Jun Xie wasn't doing this for his personal gains. He was only doing it to avenge his posterior. I'll beat your ass if you beat mine. This is fair and reasonable. And that kiss can be considered as repayment of interest. Moreover, there was nothing else I could do at that time. After all, that woman was about to use the world cage at that time. But Jun Xie hadn't been able to take his revenge by then. So, hadn't made any preparations to escape. That rogue method was perhaps the only way to shock someone as strong as her. Mei Xue Yan took deep breaths. And she finally suppressed the urge to go berserk while bursting from anger. The beautiful woman slowly became calm as a result. But her face had been becoming increasingly red. She thought it over for a second, and she couldn't help but smile. I have trained for so many years. Yet, I still haven't been able to break away from the chronic problem of competitiveness. The difference between Jun Xie and my Xian strengths isn't small. In fact, the difference is that of earth and heaven. However, I still went crazy while facing such a tiny human. In fact, I even discarded my strength so that I could compete with him in a hand-to-hand fight. This is a typical shortcoming of mine. I meet the enemy on equal footing, and suffer for it afterwards. Could he defeat me by relying on his own strength even if he was more agile than me? So, it doesn't make sense to argue with him. This tendency of mine has left me to suffer this loss. Mei Xue Yan's posterior still felt fervent and painful. And her face was blushing exceedingly. She then redirected her primal energy to heal the inflamed area. Then, she took a deep breath and spoke up. Come out, Jun Xie. There's an important matter that we must discuss. Mei Xue Yan was more powerful than the great masters at the end of the day. So, she could control her emotions more easily as well. She had felt very embarrassed a moment ago. But she had a feeling of being stronger than before now. Jun Xie's lips curled into a grin while he remained in that state of invisibility. He circulated the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune in his palms, and exerted his strength to rub his old friend while ignoring Mei Xue Yan's calls. I'm not going to trust anything you say, woman. And I'm especially not going to trust a woman who has beaten my ass. Moreover, she's the woman whose ass I've beaten, and whose lips I have forcefully kissed. After all, she's probably like a volcano which may erupt at any time. I'll be annihilated in case she blows up and hits me. How could I ever be foolish enough to get trapped in such a situation? How can I run into a volcano upon listening to a few sweet words from you? You keep shouting. And I'll rest for a moment before escaping away. I can clearly see that you don't mean to mess with my family. So, why would I care about you anymore? Mei Xue Yan waited for some time, but Jun Xie didn't reappear. She was aware that Jun Xie mistrusted her, but she still stayed a bit longer on her own accord. Then, she slowly took 2 steps to get to a blue stone that was there at the side. She used her hand to dust it. And she leisurely sat down on it after she had brushed the dust away. Each one of her movements had reverted to seem elegant and relaxed. And she again looked like a fairy that had descended to earth. Mei Xue Yan looked extraordinarily beautiful at this time. No one could have guessed that such a great beauty had been involved in a fierce hand-to-hand fight a moment ago. Come out, young Master Jun. We both know that neither of us harbors any feelings of hatred and malice towards each other. In fact, we should be cooperating in the true sense. On the contrary. You should also have understood that both of will benefit greatly if we cooperate. What happened before was nothing but a joke. Mei Xue Yan continued calmly. I'm sure that you won't bring about your doom by taking this to heart. And I also won't bring down a calamity on you. So, be at ease. And show yourself. Jun Moxie inwardly clicked his tongue. He had acted like such a rogue. And this woman was still calm. This was the first time that he was seeing such a thing. But where was the joke in what happened a moment ago? This woman has clearly gauged my true strength. Of course, the young master can appear 30 meters away if he still harbors any misgivings in his heart. Our conversation won't be affected even if we stand apart at that distance. However, the young master possesses that marvelous skill. So, I'm certain that I won't be able to do anything to you even if I use the world cage. Mei Xue Yan spoke insipidly. I have nothing more to say to young Master Jun if he still has doubts. So, I request the young master to suit himself. She turned her head after saying that. She then spoke up. You can stop hiding as well. Come out. Green Hunter. I'm sure that young Master Jun has also discovered your presence like me. The Snake King appeared from behind a tree in a ghostly manner. Even Jun Moxie's figure quickly reappeared at that moment. But he didn't appear 30 meters away. Instead, he had suddenly appeared right in front of Mei Xue Yan. Then, the young master smiled and said, Young Mei talks about cooperation even with that temper. Young Master Jun's spirit was connected to the Hongjun Pagoda at this time. So, nothing would happen to Jun Moxie even if Mei Xue Yan suddenly launched the world cage. Therefore, there was no harm in showing off and appearing right in front of that beautiful woman. Mei Xue Yan had expected Jun Moxie to reappear. But she was still a bit surprised even though she had been expecting this. A flash of embarrassment appeared on her face as she spoke in a dull voice. You're not a good man, young Master Jun. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 486. I will follow my own desires. This young master has never claimed that he's a good man, right? But we're on the same boat. After all, young Mei isn't an angel herself. Jun Moxie smiled. He then asked inquisitively, if I may dare to ask, how are you related to Tianfa's Venerable Mei? Venerable Mei? Mei Xue Yan rolled her eyes. She cursed herself in her mind for being a fool. She then smiled and said, he's my elder brother. I see. Jun Moxie's thoughts became gloomy. No wonder they have the same technique. Dang it. This young master has suffered so much because of this world cage technique. It turns out that they are siblings. They are the donghua Mei siblings. It wasn't surprising that Jun Moxie would think that way. After all, the tyrannical Venerable Mei had seemed like a real man when he had appeared in the Tianfa forest that day. Everything had made him seem like a real man, whether it was the voice or the fighting style. But this Mei Xue Yan had appeared in the form of a woman before him. And she was easy on the eyes. In fact, She was extremely beautiful. The impressions of these two personas were worlds apart. Jun Moxie's imagination was certainly very wild. However, even he wouldn't be able to imagine that beautiful woman whose posterior he had made swell was that venerable Mei who had mistreated him at the Tianfa forest the same way as she had done here. Jun Moxie. You humans have a great saying. Bright people don't speak dark words. So, I'll tell you right now, that we were looking for you to get to your master. And, you should probably know what it is for. It could be even said that we people from Tianfa may seem narrow-minded. But it seems that your master is a profound mystery. He's like that dragon whose tail can't even be spotted. Mei Xue Yan spoke in a tranquil manner. Therefore, we wish to know your master. It's fine even if it's for a short while. So, I request the young master to inform his master that I would like to discuss an important matter with him. Oh. Jun Moxie tilted his head. But, I would understand if the young master finds this inconvenient. Mei Xue Yan smiled and withdrew in order to make headway. The scared fruit's importance to the Xian beasts of Tianfa couldn't be explained in words. This was why Mei Xue Yan had decided to follow Jun Moxie first even though she had come out to experience the human world. And her main reason for doing this was derived from the fact that she wasn't very assured about this matter. That would be extremely inconvenient. So, many thanks for your consideration, young Mei. Jun Moxie grinned and spoke up. Mei Xue Yan was left angered in a bind by this reply. A long time passed before she spoke up. You're genuinely not a noble person, Jun Moxie. She had proclaimed 2 evaluations of Jun Moxie. By now it was not a good man at first. And not a noble person now. Young Mei's words seemed confusing. I admitted to not being a good man a moment ago. And I obviously can't be a noble man since I'm not even a good one. Jun Moxie shrugged and sniggered as he spoke. Good men are very easy to hurt. And a noble person is too restricted. So, you can treat me as a hoodlum or an evil tyrant. You can even treat me as a scoundrel or a demon. But never treat me as a good man or a noble person. You'll suffer if you do that, what are you saying? Don't humans wish to be good? Don't they want to boast of being noble? I don't understand why you don't want to be a good man. Is it possible that you humans have abandoned the morals which have been passed on through the millennia? Or maybe I don't understand the current moral standards of you humans. Mei Xue Yan had spoken this in a bad mood. She had encountered and dealt with innumerable troublesome characters over the course of her life. But she simply couldn't deal with this mischievous Jun Moxie she was now faced with. Jun Moxie laughed heartily at first. Then, he said, this can't be generalized. I'll tell you a story to demonstrate there were 2 people once upon a time. They lived amongst 7 or 8 other families. One amongst these 2 people was a notorious scoundrel. He was a proper rogue. However, the other one was a well-renowned good individual. The scoundrel was feared and hated. But the good man went out every morning to draw water. He would then fill each family's jars with the water he'd get. He helped his neighbors whenever they needed. In fact, he would leave no stone unturned to help people. Therefore, everyone was fond of him. And everyone was relieved to have him at home. Then, something happened one day. The scoundrel was returning from a robbery. But he wasn't able to choose a proper route due to panic. He accidentally ran into another person and knocked him down as a result. In fact, he knocked him down and killed him. However, the man who had been knocked down was another scoundrel. And This second scoundrel had been gearing up to act rudely towards an innocent woman. That scoundrel of a robber had done this unintentionally, but he had still done a good deed. Therefore, everyone praised him. In fact, they spoke of him as a savior, and a man who had suddenly repented for his sins. The authorities even considered him a model citizen. So, everyone praised him, and forgot about the misdeeds he had committed in the past. Mei Xue Yan couldn't understand what he was trying to say. So, she obviously didn't understand why he was telling her that story. But she figured that he must have a point at the end. So, she listened to him calmly, and didn't interrupt. The Snake King also listened calmly while sitting beside her. Jun Moxie laughed, and continued to speak. Then, that well-renowned good man fell seriously ill one day. He couldn't get out of the bed that morning because his fever had made it very difficult for him to do so. He didn't have any strength in his body. And he was extremely thirsty as well. He wanted a sip of water. But his jar didn't have enough water. He called out, but nobody was home. Therefore, he forced himself out of his bed and went out to fill water. But he was very tired and had no strength left. So, he could only fill water for himself before he went back to bed. The neighbors returned home in the afternoon. They were accustomed to the good man filling water for them. They had returned home tired and thirsty. But they found that their water jars were empty. They immediately got angry and went to the good man's home to criticize him. But they saw that the good man was drinking water while lying down. Consequently, they became enraged and started to curse him in their state of rage. "You're a selfish man. You feign illness and goof off at home. You want to eat your food alone?" And thus, this good man found himself alienated from everyone. In fact, everyone said that they had been cheated by him for a long time. After all, they felt that he was an extremely selfish man in reality. Jun Moxie sneered as he finished the story. He then laughed and said, "What is a good man? And what is a bad man? They're nothing but a narrow viewpoint of foolish men and women." It's very similar to how people look at government officials. Let's assume that there's a very honest and upright official. He speaks the truth and remains untainted by corrupt practices. In fact, righteousness drips from the sleeves of his robes. But the people under his jurisdiction don't even have a belly full of food to eat. Therefore, everyone will call him a wretched man. They will say that he's an official with no knowledge of governance. However, let's assume that there's another government official. And this one acts like a leech. He wants to gobble up the people's money. In fact, his greed for wealth is as insatiable as a bottomless pit. And even the deities from the ninth heaven can't set him on the right path. But the people under this official are satisfied with their lot. They have enough to eat, and they live very comfortably. So, they will say that he's an extremely good official who cares for the well-being of the people. This is the true morality of the masses nowadays. So, why should I live according to the opinions of others? What are the benefits of being a good man? What good outcome is there in that? Moreover, what's the harm in being a bad man? I'm Jun Moxie. I'm me. Let's say that there's something that I wish to do. And the entire world says that I shouldn't. But I still wish to do it. So, I'll do it. And that's only because I want to do it. Now, let's say that everyone wants me to do something, but I don't want to do it. They will say, "You'll earn name and fame if you do this. So, you should do it. You must do it." But I still won't do it. And that's only because I don't want to. I have a simple philosophy in my life. Nothing is as easily reversible as the division between good and bad. After all, right and wrong aren't set in stone. It's only a matter of perspective. Jun Moxie laughed heartily and said, "So, I will follow my own desires." Mei Xue Yan was stunned by this. A long while passed. She then shook her head and smiled as she said, "There's one thing that I don't understand even after hearing this fallacy of yours. You're either farsighted or a bigot. But what you've said is correct. Perhaps this is a common problem with you humans. Your words aren't entirely correct. It doesn't mean that all humans are like this. Aren't you Xian beasts the same? Everyone despises a bad apple and looks down on them. In fact, everyone secretly feels that they're much better than that individual. Therefore, everyone suspects this bad person in case he or she has a change of mind and tries to mend their ways. And everyone is accustomed to the help of a good man who is conscientious and helps everyone. In fact, everyone is grateful to him. However, everyone invariably thinks that he's better than them. But let's assume that this good man suddenly makes one mistake. Then, the criticism from others is several times more severe than what a normal person would have to face. And that originates from that feeling of being inferior. Consequently, the masses are unforgiving towards his mistake. It's almost as if they feel a depraved pleasure by bringing down a god from his altar. Ah, he is no better than us at the end of it. Jun Moxie continued calmly. Therefore, I believe that being a good man is a very tiring job. Moreover, you first have to be a good man in order to be a noble person. Therefore, it's even harder to be a noble person. Then, there's the so-called heroes as well. But you're required to be a good man and a noble person for that. That isn't tiring, that's plain miserable. Therefore, I'd rather be a bad man. In fact, I want to be a bad man. Jun Moxie continued in a calm manner. I only wish to become powerful. I never think about being a good man or a bad one. But I find it strange that you people from TNFA are so attached to the notion of a good or bad person. Don't you people give seniority to the strong? Don't tell me that your notions have changed. Mei Xue Yan was startled by this. It's true that the TNFA Forest's fundamental doctrine is to give seniority to the strong. But why did I get entangled in the notion of who is a good or a bad person if that's the case? Whether a person is good or bad doesn't hold any meaning for me. Are we like humans as well? Or have I been accepting the human standards of morality because I've taken on a human form? The young master speaks correctly. It seems that I had been attached to it very strongly. Mei Xue Yan smiled as she ridiculed herself. Perhaps it's not about you being strongly attached to it. Maybe it's my view that's too open. Jun Moxie smiled calmly. Maybe people like me are fitter to live in TNFA Forest instead of this outside world of mortals. That's not it. And that's because of your nature. You will inevitably find a way to be a bad man no matter where you go and live. After all, you are you. And you will always be you. Mei Xue Yan cracked a rare joke. Of course. This young master is an expert at benefiting at others' expense. I'll give everything I've got to take advantage of people. And I'd rather die than lose. Jun Moxie snorted. He then rubbed his fingers and smelled them. The smile on his face indicated the triumph of teaching a lesson. And the twirling of his fingers and the smack of his lips clearly acted as a recollection of the cheap advantage he had taken a while back. Mei Xue Yan snorted. Her beautiful face suddenly became a bit red as she seethed in anger. This vulgar guy can't even hear 2 words of praise without getting haughty about it. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 487. Any condition. Anyway, you had mentioned about cooperating. Jun Moxie smiled mischievously. But I don't understand what your proposal means. He thought. Your TNFA's beast kings are already cooperating with me, and you still don't know about it? Silly girl. That's right. Let's cooperate. Mei Xue Yan's expression was solemn. TNFA forest needs to increase its strength. We need it for the fierce fight between the 3 holy lands. We need more strength to compete. But it'll be too late if we follow the normal speed of advancement. Therefore, we must make use of external forces to enhance our strength. Mei Xue Yan's expression was dignified as she gave Jun Moxie a profound look. The supplement from our TNFA's sacred fruit is an example of that. But there will only be 1 per person. And that isn't enough for us. Moreover, we can't make such medicines on our own. But your master can refine them. I've heard that he has already refined divine pills which can increase Xian's strength by 10 years. Moreover, these pills don't have any side effects. We want such miraculous things. But an increase in strength by 10 years seems too little for us. Jun Moxie frowned. You mean to say that you want more number of pills once they've been refined from the sacred fruit? And they should obviously have no side effects either. Then, you also want other such pills. After that, you intend to use these pills to upgrade strength as quickly as possible. You wish to get the Xian Beast Kings across the bottleneck. Then, you want to give them the other pills to get going towards the next bottleneck. So, you're basically saying that you want the Beast Kings to have to successive breakthroughs so that they can rise 2 ranks in the shortest possible time. Is this what you mean to say? That's correct. Intelligent people speak intelligent words. That's exactly what I meant. Mei Xue Yan's eyes filled with satisfaction. She remained calm as she spoke further. But I couldn't find your master. So I came to search for you. I find your thought process ridiculous, young Mei. In fact, it is excessively fantastical. I'm sure you're aware that your request will create many problems for us. Let me tell you something, you are doomed to fail in this fight even if Master comes out with such a miracle. Jun Moxie frowned. You will realize this once you see the pills refined from the scared fruit. First, you need a good amount of luck when it comes to the refining of such pills. Secondly, you need lots of medicinal ingredients at your disposal. Moreover, the medicinal herbs required for such pills are top-notch. Thirdly, refining these kinds of pills takes a lot of time. And lastly, the refining process demands a huge consumption of energy. However, the final outcome still depends of the heavens will even if these 4 requirements are fulfilled. The probability of success or failure in refinement is always very hard to predict. In addition, the medicines that improve your strength have some limitations as well. And this point stands true without exception. It is often noted that one's body builds resistance to the stimulant provided by these pills after your strength increases under its effect. This means that you won't be able to use the pills the 2nd or the 3rd time. Think about it, the 10 years pills increases strength by 10 years. So, shouldn't an individual be able to increase their strength 10,000 times by taking those pills continuously? But that's not possible. So, I can only tell you that your thought process is downright impractical. You ought to understand one thing if you wish to increase strength that quickly. You will need 3 kinds of pills during this period of time. And Each pill must provide 30 years' worth of strength upgrades. Moreover, none of the pills can be the same as the other. This is the only way you can reach your bottleneck targets. The pills from the sacred fruit of TNFA will be able to help you in making the breakthroughs only after these basic requirements are met. This is like saying that my master can't do anything else for a long time. He'll only be refining pills for you this entire time. Didn't you feel that this is too excessive when you asked for it? Do you think that my master is someone you can order about as per your will? I know that this is too much to ask for. And I don't even know what kind of a person your master is. But we have no other choice. Mei Xue Yan continued calmly. After 3 years. No, it should be after 2 years and 9 months. The 3 holy lands will fight after 2 years and 9 months. And it wouldn't matter which one of them we face if things continue this way. After all, the elusive world of the immortals, or the great golden city, or the boundless ocean of blood, each of them will easily defeat TNFA forest if we go on as per our current strength. Our TNFA has maintained its status for 9,000 years. And the consequences would be too horrible if my elder brother loses this status. We Xian beasts have always been discriminated against in this big continent. We've only been able to squeeze our ranks amongst the 3 holy lands by relying on our fiercely overbearing strength. However, the TNFA forest wouldn't remain TNFA forest if we lose this status. Mei Xue Yan had a somewhat pained and self-deprecating expression on her face. And Jun Moxie could tell that the situation would have crossed the point of desperation if someone as strong as Mei Xue Yan had such an expression on their face. It seems that they have nowhere to go. Jun Moxie frowned and paced several steps. His heart was gripped in endless hesitation. Jun Moxie knew that he was sure to have a lifelong ally in TNFA forest if he helped them with this. Therefore, the Jun family would be well placed. Moreover, the lifespans of these Xian beasts was very long. And this meant that even their descendants won't need to worry about any troublesome situations long into the future. In fact, it'll be a boon for generations after generations of his descendants. And it would only cost him a few divine pills. It sounded simple, but it had to be said that he could presently refine only one kind of pill that met their requirements. And others could only be possible after he had advanced to the 4th and 5th level inside the Hongjun Pagoda. Moreover, he needed to be at the 6th level to refine the pills from the 1,000 evils 10,000 poisons fruit, or what these Xian beasts called as TNFA's sacred fruit. However, that heavenly treasure would turn into ash if he hadn't met the necessary conditions and capability standards. Can I break through to the 6th level within 2 years and 9 months? Jun Moxie had no assurance regarding this. Jun Moxie was well aware of the difficulty in advancing one level inside the Hongjun Pagoda and advancing with the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. It hadn't even been a 1 year since he had come to that world. But he had already advanced by leaps and bounds. In fact, he had crossed 3 levels in this short period of time. But this achievement corresponded to 3 starting levels. However, he would require an increasing amount of time to make each breakthrough as he would go higher up. In fact, the requirements might even multiply many folds. I know that this is a bother for you and your master. But our TNFA will arrange any medicinal herb you require to concoct those pills as long as you and your master agree to cooperate with us. It doesn't matter if they're at the bottom of an ocean, or at the top of a snowy mountain. It doesn't matter whether the place is too hot, or it's too cold, we'll give our all to assist you. Mei Xue Yan put her hands behind her back. Moreover, we'll agree to any conditions you set, no matter how unreasonable or irrational. Any conditions? Jun Moxie's heart thumped when he heard this. Any conditions? It was Jun Moxie's biggest dream to build himself an estate in the Tianfa forest. After all, he wouldn't have to worry about the problems of the outside world once he had done so. Moreover, the young Master Jun was quite fond of the beast kings of Tianfa forest. Their temperament was very much to young Master Jun's liking. He had planned to help even if he wouldn't benefit out of it. But it now seemed that he could also benefit from it. Moreover, his benefits would be huge. This was an irresistible temptation for him. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth. Dang it! Power can't be achieved without pressure. Isn't it only the 6th level of the Hongjun Pagoda? This young master can cross 3 levels in half a year. So, why can't he cross a further 3 in around 2 years? Let's do it. This is only a matter of forcing myself to train harder. That's all. And I will get equally good dividends in terms of enhancement of strength and extra benefits. Well, I personally think that there's no issue with this matter. But I need to consult my master. After all, the success or failure of this depends upon my master's desire. But you be at ease. I'll try my best to facilitate this cooperation. However, it's better if we discuss the subject of our conditions a later date. After all, I can't speak for my master. In fact, I suppose that young Mei wouldn't believe me even if I said that I do. Isn't that right? Jun Moxie changed the topic in a blink of an eye. After all, he knew that he couldn't reveal his hidden cards at this time. If I let these people know now that I'm that mysterious and unrivaled black-clothed master, the consequences would be too horrible. All powerful enemies will flock to me. In fact, many people will try to destroy me in my formative years even if they don't have any enmity with me. Therefore, this secret that I don't have the strength to override the world can't be told to anyone, not even if the said individual is very dear to me. I understand. Many thanks, young Master Jun. Mei Xue Yan's lips squirmed as she spoke in a low voice. But what are these so-called 3 holy lands? Could young Mei possibly clear this doubt of mine? Jun Moxie had finally gotten the opportunity to ask this question. It must be mentioned that this question had been bothering young Master Jun for a long time now. It was possible that most common folk didn't even know of existences like the Silver Blizzard City and Shuehan Manor. There were only a few Xian families in the society at large. However, even these Xian families regarded the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor as the top entities of the world. Even Jun Moxie hadn't thought that there would be anything above the Tianfa forest. But he had then found out that there was an even taller mountain in existence. This was when he had learned of the extremely fierce 3 holy lands. The Tianfa forest was known to everyone as the most dangerous entity in the world. So, what were these 3 holy lands? It seemed like that these existences were even higher than the Silver Blizzard City. And this was enough to shock even Jun Moxie. In fact, he had been wondering whether there were entities that were even higher than the 3 holy lands. What level are those people at if they exist? But the main question remains the same: why are there no legends about these places? The fierce 3 holy lands originated over 9,000 years ago. Everyone was vying for supremacy at that time. The continent was in chaos as a result. So, it was only natural that increasingly stronger entities were emerging in such an environment. After all, times of trouble often give birth to many heroes. And the heroes also created specific circumstances. Mei Xue Yan forced a smile as she slowly explained. However, an extremely unforeseen event occurred in the continent at the most opportune moment. Mei Xue Yan took a deep breath. Have you ever heard of the Pillars of Heaven Mountains? Jun Moxie. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 488. The Battle for Seizing the Heavens and the Fierce Trinity. Pillars of Heaven Mountains. It's the tallest mountain in Xian continent, right? It's located on the southernmost point of the continent. And it's said to be an extremely huge mountain. People say that it rises towards the heavens for thousands of kilometers and shoots straight into the sky. It's also said to be very wide. It ranges across from one side of the continent to the other. Legends say that it reaches till the end of the sky. No man or animal can fly over it. Even eagles are no exception to this. It has no signs of human inhabitation, and it's said that no one can conquer it. The Pillar of Heaven mountain reaches to the gods. Even the deities and devils can't climb it. Jun Moxie knew about this mountain range. In fact, he was quite interested in it. How would this mountain range fare against the Kunlun Mountains on Earth? Moreover, these Pillars of Heaven mountains are supposed to be taller than the tallest ranges back on Earth. Plus, their highest point is so astounding that it is even higher than Mount Everest. Also, they stretch across an entire continent. They ought to be a wonder of nature. Therefore, the young Master Jun had planned to scale it and take a look for himself. Yes, these mountains had suddenly started to crumble for some reason at that time. Flames had risen to many kilometers in height. Massive stones had been sent flying to dozens of kilometers. And the millions of people who lived near these mountains were turned into corpses. Even spirit Xian experts weren't able to escape alive. The entire land had shook. A strange and hot liquid had rushed out from the land underneath. This liquid was so hot that it could even melt gold. That incident was a calamity which had affected the entire human world. And the death toll of the Xian continent had surpassed tens of millions after that cataclysm. Even the peaks around supporting the Heavens mountain had suddenly crumbled by more than half in height. No one was capable of scaling those mountains before this incident. Even birds couldn't fly over. However, they had seemingly been cut down. People still couldn't go over it even though the size of these mountains had been reduced very significantly. After all, these mountains were still many kilometers tall. But people soon discovered something startling because of this. The Xian continent didn't end at the supporting the Heavens mountain. There was another world beyond these mountains. Mei Xue Yan's voice had become heavy. And Jun Moxie had guessed that the calamity at the mountains must have been caused by a massive earthquake and volcanic eruption. However, two grotesquely shaped things suddenly crossed over to this side after the peaks crumbled. Or it should be said that they were grotesque-looking men. Mei Xue Yan continued to speak. Then, these two grotesque-looking men had a fierce battle with the people on this side of the mountains. In fact, it got so bad that the great masters of that era were forced to join hands in order to kill them. But that area was soon crawling with many more of those men. Even the great masters of that era couldn't face so many of those strange men. But those strange men possessed great strength, and they could have caused unspeakable destruction if they were able to invade the rest of the continent. Therefore, all the Xian experts of the continent were concentrated to the north of the supporting the Heavens mountain. These people then tried to stop those men with everything they had. That was termed as the first battle for seizing the heavens. Mei Xue Yan sighed deeply. The entire continent had stood together like an impenetrable wall. And they had succeeded forcing those strange beings to retreat. But everyone gradually understood one point from this battle. It was a wasteful sacrifice to send anyone weaker than a great masters to deal with those men. In fact, even the experts at level 4 Spirit Xian Peak couldn't hurt those grotesque beings despite using the full extent of their strength. Therefore, these battles came to be fought between the strongest Xian warriors of both sides. And those who were weaker than great masters were told to disband and return. After all, there was no need for pointless sacrifice. 4 of greatest forces were formed inside the continent at that time. The purpose of these forces was to deal with those invading forces in an effective manner. These forces comprised the elusive world of immortals, Great Golden City, and the boundless ocean of blood. Even the strongest beast kings fought in that battle because this war would decide the fate of the entire Xian continent. Moreover, our force was entirely self-contained. Tian Fa Forest's strength was the mightiest amongst those 4 at that time. In fact, it could be said that Tian Fa's strength was greatest in the entire universe. The 3 great lands, the 3 holy lands, started to screen the human Xian experts. And people could go into the 3 holy lands if their Xian strength reached the realm of the great masters. They would then wait for the next battle for seizing the heavens. These people would undergo rigorous Xian training during this time. In fact, they wouldn't even be allowed to go out. That's because any slack could result in a catastrophic defeat in the battle for seizing the heavens. And a defeat in that battle would result in the greatest of calamities for all humanity. Therefore, the 3 holy lands became like concentration camps for the continent's greatest strength. And only the genuinely powerful would get the chance to enter the 3 holy lands. Our Tian Fa Forest's force is naturally composed of Xian beasts. Humans would never join hands with us. So, the 3 holy lands started to become increasingly prosperous as time passed. However, the Tian Fa Forest got stuck with its limitations and remained the same as before. Consequently, Tian Fa started to decline even though it was once the mightiest force. Each one of the 3 holy lands selected extremely harsh environments in order to check the invasion more effective. But those environments resulted in great benefits when it came to the matter of strength advancement. Hence, the 3 holy lands gradually faded away from the sight of the society at large as time went on. They would occasionally come out to search for great master-level experts who would be willing to join their ranks. But these 3 lands maintained no other kind of presence in the society. Thousands of years came to pass, and they were gradually forgotten by the society. But the battle for seizing the heavens never came to a stop. This is the origin story of the fierce Trinity. Venerable Mei was leisurely gazing into the horizon. So, that's what it is about. Jun Moxie's reply had sounded a bit vague. In fact, it had seemed as if he had accepted this without thinking. However, his heart was brimming with admiration. There are people who are protecting this continent in secret. They're fighting there in silence. They're making sacrifices in silence. These places are worthy of being called holy lands because of this one point alone. Therefore, I was somewhat flabbergasted when I saw that someone with a Xian strength as powerful as your masters was moving around so freely and unfettered. Mei Xue Yan slowly shifted her gaze and looked at Jun Moxie. Ah, that's probably because us master and disciple live a simple life, and don't relate ourselves with troubles of the society. So, we don't reveal ourselves in the public very easily. Jun Moxie laughed out. That's possible, I guess. However, the fierce Trinity has been fighting openly over the past millennia. And they seem to have forgotten their original aim and significance. It can be presumed that there are many powerful and disillusioned individuals over there these days. And the 3 holy lands aren't holy lands anymore. Mei Xue Yan sighed for a while. Then, she continued to speak. You see, fighting and keeping surveillance every day was an extremely exhausting task. Therefore, the Trinity eventually decided to put forth the proposal of pre-decided decisive battles instead. After all, that meant that they could come over to the mainland from time to time and live the life a world-renowned individual could lead. Besides, the weather in the supporting the heavens mountains is extremely cold and no individual can lead a comfortable life over there. Therefore, they decided to summon those freaks with the intention of proposing their idea of decisive battles. Those freaks came over to discuss. But those freaks obviously wanted to damage the Trinity's interests. After all, they were filthy, disgusting, mean, and utterly disrespectful. So, they neither agreed nor disagreed to this proposal. However, the decisive battles started taking place at regular intervals of 10 years thereafter. In fact, it had become a custom. But then, they felt that 10 years was too short a time period. After all, they couldn't recuperate in that amount of time. So, they changed the time gap to 100 years. But the strength of the three Holy Lands had increased very considerably in the time span of the first 100 years. So, they destroyed the enemy's forces in the decisive battle that followed. The strength of those outsiders had been damaged very badly in that war. So, they didn't invade again after the next 100 years time span passed. In fact, they often didn't arrive until 200 years had passed. However, they'd recover and become stronger in that time frame. But they were always stopped and pushed back by the power of the three Holy Lands no matter how fierce they'd become. Thus, the time frame between two successive wars continued to increase. And it's already been 500 years since the last attack. Mei Xue Yan sighed. The time frame between two successive wars has continued to increase. And it has now reached to 500 years from the original 10. Increasing this ceasefire period bring only advantages to those outsiders. After all, their main objective is to get out of the harsh conditions they live in. So, they continue to work hard for the sake of their prosperity. But 500 years is an extremely long period of time for those on this side of the mountains. In fact, generations can change in such a long time. Consequently, we've already forgotten the terror and aftermaths of those wars. The fierce Trinity still exists. But they haven't been able to remain the three Holy Lands in the true sense. Moreover, I don't know when it happened, but it seems that their people have secretly entered the common society and have started to pull the strings of imperial powers from the dark. Their transformation has gone from bad to worse. In fact, the three Holy Lands have secretly begun to contend for power over the last 100 years. This state of affairs has become rather lamentable. I still don't understand this. After all, the three Holy Lands are now beyond anyone's reach. So, why would an entity of their status try meddle in worldly matters? Mei Xue Yan spoke in a somewhat melancholic tone. And what's more tragic is that the three Holy Lands have started to fight over internal rankings now. They wish to see who is ranked above whom. Ha! I don't even know how much strength they've squandered over this strife. It's a pity. And the time for the decisive battle must be within these few years. However, things don't look too good for the first time in over 9,000 years. I'm very worried about this. Mei Xue Yan's beautiful eyes were filled with sadness. I'm a Xian beast, not a human. But I still feel myself a part of this Xian continent. Successive generations of Tian Fa have died fighting in these decisive battles over the last 9,000 years. We've lost a huge number of our brave warriors while the three Holy Lands have been fighting for supremacy. In fact, these battles have become the mission of our existence. And we've already lost a lot of blood in these battles for seizing the heavens. It's true that I've always looked down upon your meager humanity that inhabits this huge continent. But we will still guard it. We don't do it for you filthy humans that live in this continent. We do it because it's our duty to guard this land. After all, the Tianfa forest is our responsibility, and we can't run away from it. Therefore, the flourishing reputation of Tianfa can't be lost from my hands since I carry the name of Mei. So, we need to increase our strength this time. It's important that we pull all the stops and make Tianfa more powerful as fast as possible. After all, we'll have to take the task of pushing those invaders back in case they break past the humans of the Trinity. Things may turn for the worst. But we'll at least be able to take them down with us. Therefore, we must participate in the battle for seizing the heavens. However, we must be ranked at par with the 3 holy lands in order to participate in that battle. Otherwise, they'll rescind our qualifications to fight in the decisive battle. Jun Moxie couldn't help but feel deep veneration when he heard that. He had said that he wasn't a good man or a noble person. In fact, he had even disdained those so-called chivalrous heroes. But he had always admired the true heroes in his heart. General Yu Fei from the history of his previous world had been one such individual. Similarly, he had come to admire General Jun Wuhui in this life. Mei Xue Yan was only a Xian beast in human form. But her persistence and open-minded nature was enough to make all humans feel ashamed. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 489. Horrible people of the strange race. The situation you've described makes it seem that things get more conspiratorial as the time between 2 successive battles increases. Jun Moxie solemnly considered the matter for a while before he spoke up. It was fine when the 10 years period was extended to 100 years. After all, you Xian beasts would easily be able to live through a time span of 100 years. Moreover, even the extremely strong humans would be able to live that long. In fact, they might even be able to take part in 2, or maybe even 3 or 4 battles for seizing the heavens. But that short time period has been extended to 500 years now. So, the Xian beasts are still fine. But this plan takes a sinister turn when it comes to us humans. Jun Moxie raised a finger. Everyone knows that an individual can extend their lifespan by drawing support from their Xian qi if their Xian cultivation crosses the Earth Xian level. And an individual can live up to 150 to 200 years if they reach the spirit Xian realm. And they can prolong their life even further if they go a step further and reach the cultivation level of a great master. But they won't be able to extend it beyond the limit of 350 years. Jun Moxie had learned this from the solitary falcon. However, even solitary falcon didn't know about the levels above that of the great masters. Actually, there are humans who are stronger than the great master level. And those people can have lifespans ranging from 400 to 600 years. I'm sure that your master's cultivation should have reached such a level. In fact, the records in my Tianfa suggest that one can even go beyond this level. Humans can become even stronger and can extend their lifespans even further. But such people are very few in number. And that's because there have been very few people in the past 1,000 years who have reached such a high level. Those who had participated in the last battle for seizing the heavens will have added another 500 years to their age by now. So, it could be said that a vast majority of them would have no chance of participating in the next decisive battle. And That's because one needs to train for at least 200 years in order to become strong enough to qualify for participating in the battle for seizing the heavens. However, the next battle will take place over 500 years after the last one. Therefore, the lifespan of humans wouldn't allow them to participate in the upcoming battle since it would take place after 500 years. Even the most talented and extraordinary humans would be bound by the limitations of human lifespan. Therefore, they would only be able to blossom for one decisive battle. Consequently, the only way for them to fight the battle for seizing the heavens is to pass the torch on to future generations. Mei Xue Yan sighed deeply. After all, those who live for over a millennia due to their Xian strength only exist in myths and legends. Every battle for seizing the heaves is tragic and catastrophic. It's a miserable calamity. Every strong expert that goes to fight in it must go only upon embracing the notion of certain death, no matter how unreasonably powerful they are. And it's the same for their disciples. After all, the disciples have to stand aside and watch their masters sacrifice their lives to those savage outsiders. This is the way they've been able to pass on this torch from generation to generation. Mei Xue Yan's beautiful eyes seemed somewhat pained as she spoke. I was fortunate that the then Lord of Tianfa had taken me to watch the battle for seizing the heavens in those days. I was still a very small 7th level at. She didn't speak further. She only let out a deep sigh. Every lord of the Tianfa forest has always stated that the extension of these time spans between each consecutive battle for seizing the heavens is clearly a conspiracy of those strange men from the other side. They lay waiting for 500 years. They are willing to do that. But we can't. Those people also go through generational changes. But the conditions over there are extremely horrible. Their lifestyle is based on eliminating the poor. Survival of the fittest is their most important principle. So, each of their generation sees the rise of countless powerful beings in their ranks. But this side of the continent is riddled with many faults. This time period is too long for us. Moreover, it's very easy for humans to forget things and get comfortable instead. And this is an even bigger enemy to a person's fighting spirit than the wear and tear of continuous fighting. Why don't we just cross over the mountains and kill those outsiders? Won't it be better if we get rid of these future problems? Jun Moxie frowned. Do you take all the countless extremely strong entities from earlier as fools? Your blabbing would have been a reality if it were possible. In fact, this solution has already been tried by many powerful experts. However, it is extremely difficult to cross over. There are some very powerful experts who are able to cross over to the other side. But only a very few of such people are present throughout the continent in each generation, maybe around 10 at best. However, there are countless powerful beings waiting at the other side. In fact, they are patiently waiting as if we're their prey. Moreover, there are millions of them over there. And they live extremely scattered. So, how can we kill them all at once? We'll probably be killed to the last man if we hastily rush over. The Pillars of Heaven mountains aren't merely a moat for those creatures on the other side. They are also a moat for us people on this side. Mei Xue Yan sighed and continued. Ending it once and for all would obviously be great. But it's impossible. Look at current circumstance, we're hardly able to maintain the capability to withstand their invasion. So, what attack can we speak of? Moreover, the environment at our enemy's side is extremely harsh. The conditions over there are so harsh that humans can't even be guaranteed of their survival. Even Xian beasts can't be assured in this regard. So, we simply can't talk about carrying out a huge slaughter. Jun Moxie became silent for a while, but he continued to calculate in his mind. This is a very difficult matter. Moreover, It has tons of hard-to-negotiate problems. We have the three holy lands on one hand. They are planning the vicious fight for supremacy, and can't work towards one goal anymore. Moreover, we don't have enough strong fighters in our ranks. We'd need a few hundred great master-level fighters for something like this. Moreover, these said fighters would need to be consolidated under one command. Such a team could easily cause a great deal of damage to the opposition's forces even if they don't succeed in destroying them in one fell swoop. It is true that the enemy eliminates the weak amongst them, and preserves only the strong. They surely follow the survival of the fittest rule. But it's unlikely that all of them would be extremely strong. He couldn't help but think of the troops under his own command, heaven destroyers and soul devourers. If they... Jun Xie couldn't help but shake his head as their thought crossed his mind. My household guards aren't strong enough yet. Even the strongest one is too weak. He's only at the Earth Xian first rank at this time. I fear they won't even be able to cross supporting the Heaven Mountains passes. But, if this was to happen after a few decades... He shook his head. It was too late. If you wish to kill a real man, you must do it when he's immature. It's never easy to kill a man once he has grown up. It's possible that the man might not be able to achieve much in his lifetime. However, they will certainly have gained experience once they've matured. There's something I find a bit odd. The Xian continent has always been tolerant to the coexistence of Xian beasts and human. So, why can't we accept those people as well? Moreover, they can be considered as human. So, shouldn't they resemble humans in some ways? Those outsiders, how are they different? Jun Xie asked since he was still confused. Moreover, they're quite strong as well. So, why can't they be accepted and assimilated into the population here? Ah, you haven't seen those outsiders. So, you don't know how horrendous they are. Moreover, you don't know what filthy and disgusting condition they are in. And that's why you have this childish and naive way of thinking. Mei Xue Yan looked speechless. It seemed like she felt disgusted. In fact, it appeared that she found this entire issue so filthy that she felt the filth even while discussing it. Oh. Jun Xie seemed quite interested. On the contrary. What do they look like? The appearance of that tribe, how does one properly describe it? Their appearance consists of dual body features. They somewhat resemble those deformed human twins who are born conjoined. But one half of the body can't survive after the loss of the other half. In fact, countless senior experts in the past had figured this to be these outsiders' primary weakness. But their disadvantage is also their advantage. That's because their bodies consist of two individuals. Moreover, the meridians inside their bodies can complement each other. And they can cover any insufficiencies of the other half in this way. So, their techniques display twice the effect even with half the effort. Their appearance is also very repulsive. And their conduct is even crueler. It can be said that they aren't humans. Therefore, it would be inaccurate to say that they have no human qualities. But that's because they can't even be considered as humans in the first place. Mei Xue Yan frowned as she spoke. Moreover, the tribes of these conjoined people have extremely strange and bizarre techniques. They can hide themselves in the shortest of time period. They can merge into trees and water. In fact, you could say that they can transform their forms. And this can cause a huge headache. Mei Xue Yan muttered to herself irresolutely. Conjoined people? All of them are conjoined? Jun Xie stared wide-eyed. He had often heard that being conjoined was a defect. But he had never thought that there would be an entire tribe of such people. However, He then heard Mei Xue Yan describe their techniques. Doesn't that sound familiar? Their techniques appear similar to the wondrous techniques you had used earlier. Mei Xue Yan muttered to herself for a long while before she finally spoke up. What do you mean by their techniques appear similar to ones I displayed? You can see that this young master is a real man, a truly handsome youngster. How can you even compare me to those shitty deformed people? Jun Moxie had been listening carefully, and with keen interest. But that statement from the extremely beautiful Mei Xue Yan left him feeling very angry. The techniques used by those conjoined people can at most be considered as a 5-elemental escape technique. And that's an extremely lowly technique. How could that compare to the incomparable art of unlocking the heaven's fortune? Or the yin-yang escape? This is too big an insult. Don't get mad, young master. I know what you're trying to say. Your techniques had a hint of similarity with theirs. But I obviously know that the two are too far apart when it comes to the quality of it. In fact, it is like the difference between heaven and earth. You can't speak of them in the same breath. However, my world cage technique is the greatest nemesis of their techniques. After all, I merely need to raise a hand in order to kill the greatest of enemies. My technique can even imprison you. But it can only do so for a short while. In fact, I reckon that you might be able to break away if you put everything into disabling my imprisonment. Moreover, I guess that I can restrain you only because your cultivation is still very low. However, I'd be surprised if my world cage worked against you once you've reached your master's cultivation. Mei Xue Yan's words came rather unexpectedly for Jun Moxie. After all, Mei Xue Yan had intentionally placed young Master Jun at the top while placing herself beneath him. Jun Moxie couldn't help but feel elated at Mei Xue Yan's flattering words. But Jun Moxie continued to question even when he was swimming with pride. What kind of weapons are these people adept at? And how good are they with them? Those outsiders seem to use only long and slender blades. Their blades have evolved over the millennia. Moreover, they know extraordinary ways of slashing and stabbing. And they also have this habit of shouting a chant while using their blades. But the culture and language of the rest of the continent is very different than theirs. So, we can't understand their chants. In fact, it becomes very annoying. These people may be conjoined. But they're still people, right? Is that image so very strange? Don't tell me. Jun Moxie blinked. His eyes were filled with a daring and inquisitive color. In fact, he had a great urge to go and capture one of those outsiders right now so that he could examine them. Ahem. Mei Xue Yan coughed. She seemed a bit uncomfortable. The beautiful woman hesitated to open her mouth for a while. However, she eventually steeled herself and spoke up. You don't know these conjoined people. Each one of them are one man and one woman joined together as one person. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 490. Indignant at injustice. So, brothers and sisters share the same body. Jun Moxie exclaimed. Then, he thought of something and spoke. It seems like the body structure of these outsiders is like this due to their very genes. But how do they reproduce if their bodies are like this? Let's say that a man goes out to find a wife. However, he would also have to see his own younger sister and his wife's elder brother, wouldn't he? That would be embarrassing. And that would certainly go against the accepted boundaries of human relations. It was natural for Jun Moxie to believe that the conjoined pair of a man and a woman from the same parent would make them brother and sister. Mei Xue Yan's face became red. She seemed was anxious and embarrassed. She didn't know how she was supposed to answer this. So, she glared at Jun Moxie for a while. Then, she closed her eyes and spoke. Our ancestors would have tried to accept these conjoined people if they knew what the boundaries of proper human relations were. And that would have been great. However, those filthy creatures don't look for mates. Those conjoined siblings are couples. Later on, some people of the fierce Trinity decided to give these outsiders a name since it was awkward to call them strange race or conjoined twins. They were eventually termed as wolf men since the viciousness of their characters was similar to that of wolves. Mei Xue Yan finally finished her brief. Wolf. Men. Ha. So, there are such lowly existences in this world. Those are. Jun Moxie was stunned. In fact, he had blurted this out since he had been left flabbergasted. After all, he had never even dreamt that he would burst onto such news. What? You are a young master from a noble family. Why can't you be a little more refined in front of a lady? Do you have to use those obscene words? Mei Xue Yan's pretty face became deathly white. Her extremely beautiful eyes were opened wide, and her finger was pointed at Jun Moxie. She stood up with a whoosh sound, and was almost ready to storm off. Mei Xue Yan had lived an experience-rich life. But she had never expected that someone would use such obscene imagery in front of her. Those words' meaning was extremely nauseating and disgusting. In fact, she nearly fainted out of embarrassment when she thought about it. It must be said that it was highly appropriate for Jun Moxie to think of those words. But his choice of term was too graphic. Therefore, the images one would imagine while using those words would appear extremely repulsive. Feck that shit. Jun Moxie felt the anger in his very spirits being provoked. His face was full of wrath and disdain. He made threatening gestures as he sprayed saliva. I wish their ancestors were more cultured. This young master has hated those shameless devils his entire life. Those lowly little dipshit, they've even dared cause trouble on Xian continent's lands. They've dared to wage these battles for seizing the heavens? Seize this godangit. This injustice makes my heart fill with indignation. I declare that I will strive to mortise them my entire life. In fact, I will chop off my little master if I'm not able to eradicate the very roots of that gang of. The lovely faces of the two beautiful Xian beast ladies became red. The two women felt extremely embarrassed as they saw the youngster jumping up and down while spewing out these unbearable obscenities. This is too aggressive. I had only spoken about those outsiders. That's all. So, why is this young master so full of resentment? It seems like someone has dug up his ancestor's grave or something. Moreover, one look at him is enough to tell that his anger isn't fake. It genuinely comes from the bottom of his heart. How would those two understand where that anger in Jun Moxie's heart was coming from? After all, someone from their cultural heritage and history could never understand where Jun Moxie's resentment had stemmed from. These wolfmen weren't the same as those outsiders. However, they had still succeeded in mobilizing the nationalist sentiment of hatred which had been buried in the deepest abyss of his heart. And this was the reason why he had decided to behead those shameless people. Moreover, their Xian strength and numbers had made the similarities more striking. It seemed as if the young master had decided to eat the dog since he couldn't find the rabbit. Consequently, Jun Moxie's resentment was quite a heartfelt one. Are you all right, young Master Jun? Mei Xue Yan's face had remained reddened for a while. Therefore, she had asked this in a tone full of disdain. After all, The young master had just given vent to his feelings. But his manner of doing so was entirely contrary to what one would expect of a young master from a noble family. "I'm fine. What would happen to me?" Jun Moxie rolled his eyes and roared. "You don't worry. I'll make your request come true. I'll back it to the hilt. You have my absolute and full backing in this matter. We must eliminate those outsiders before they become a bigger threat. We must resolutely implement the policy of eradicating those outsiders. We must eradicate this problem forever. This young master will personally participate when the time comes. I will kill them all. I'll wreak havoc in their world. Such filthy and shameless creatures don't deserve to live in this peaceful world." Young Master Jun made a fist and thumped his chest. His eyes looked straight ahead as he assumed an oath-making pose. Then, he spoke up while trembling with energy. "This Jun Moxie will guard this Xian continent since I'm a part of it. I swear on my honor that I won't shirk. I will sacrifice myself and spare no effort to kill them. Their blood will soar glittering in the light. It will turn into an all-round bloodbath. I will kill their entire kin. I will feed them to the dogs." Mei Xue Yan laughed and said, "I admit that your skills are marvelous, young Master Jun. But your strength is still quite shallow. And the battle for seizing the heavens is almost upon us. So, you won't be of any use in that decisive battle even if the speed of your advancement increases 2 to 3 times. Your heart is laudable, and I can sympathize with your emotions." "Hee hee." Jun Moxie snorted and replied, "That is yet to be seen." "What is yet to be seen? You think that you're extraordinary because you're strong enough to crack rocks right now? Your divine sword can cut gold and dissect jade. That light and wondrous skill can transform your body and redouble your power. But do you think that turns you into a never-before-seen hero of this world? We're all friends here now. So, I'll take the responsibility of telling you even though it might hurt your confidence. You wouldn't be able to match up to a genuine expert with your current strength. In fact, you'll pose no threat whatsoever." The young Master Jun glanced at Mei Xue Yan. "A genuine expert? For example, any supreme expert can take you down with ease. It wouldn't even matter whether they're one of the 8 great masters or a beast king from Tianfa, you'll be nothing more than an ordinary man in front of them," Mei Xue Yan said in a dull tone. "Ah. And this means that you 2 sisters could also do the same? Of course it includes Green Hunter and me as well. I only need to use 5% of my strength to send you to your doom. In fact, it wouldn't matter how wondrous your agility or martial technique are. You must never doubt this fact." Mei Xue Yan gave a gentle smile as she looked at Jun Moxie. "So, you must train properly, young man. You'll understand some things once you grow up." Jun Moxie became dizzy with madness. "You think that I don't know the difference between our strengths? You feel that I don't know that I can't contend against your strength? But that tone of yours resembles that of an age-old person who is preaching the ways of the world to an extremely young person. Or like a mother comforting her young son. How can this young master speak of being a real man of great stature when he's being considered so lowly?" Green Hunter was standing on the side. And she was also stunned. In fact, she had opened her big and beautiful eyes wide. How can elder sister say that? Moreover, this tone isn't her usual one. In fact, it is almost as if she's trying to appear strong when she's feeling weak inside. Mei Xue Yan's expressions had showed no change, but she was quite frightened inside. She had been shocked by his words and deeds. And she was already on guard against him as a result. However, it wasn't the kind of guard one would put up while facing an enemy. Instead, it was a guard against a man, a woman's guard against a man. There had never been such a man for many years who had made her raise her guard like that. And that was because they weren't much in her eyes. But this youngster had given rise to this feeling inside her. What am I scared of? I might surprise you, Jun Moxie responded in an extremely calm manner. Oh. The young master has admittedly surprised me to a fair degree. But you're talking about an unprecedented feat if you're claiming that you will go from a mid-level Sky Xian expert to becoming at least as strong as a great master in these insufficient 3 years. In fact, this would seem like the fancies of a lunatic. I'm only telling you the truth. And I hope that you don't take offense, Mei Xue Yan replied insipidly. Some truths needed to be mentioned with regards to Mei Xue Yan's words. Many great heroes had been born in the Xian continent ever since these battles for seizing the heavens had started. After all, times of trouble give rise to great heroes. Therefore, many individuals with frightening talents had come up in the past. And they had achieved miraculous feats. However, even those who had achieved the greatest of levels at wondrous speed had always reached the great master level after 40 years. And there had never been an exception to this. Bailey Luo Yun was already a rare talent with respect to the past thousands of years. After all, he had reached the Earth Xian level at the mere age of 25. But even this genius was nothing compared to the talents this continent's long history could boast about. In fact, Bailey Luo Yun wouldn't be able to reach the level of great masters before the age of 60. However, even that was a rare achievement. Young Master Jun was certainly a once-in-a-millennia rarity for reaching the Sky Xian level at the age of 16 or 17. But there had been around 8 or 10 people like him in the past. But a young genius doesn't always evolve into an old genius. And many of those who had reached the Sky Xian realm below the age of 20 hadn't reached the level of great masters before they had turned 100 despite training without breaks for their entire lives. So, Mei Xue Yan wasn't entirely mocking Jun Moxie when she had called his words the fancies of a lunatic. Young Mei's words are jewels of wisdom. So, how could this young master mind them? But there are many strange things in this world. And they are rarely ever achieved by people. Everything depends on the individual. Young Mei is perhaps speaking of things she couldn't do. But it doesn't mean that others can't do it. After all, the frogs peering into the sky from the well don't know the extent of the stars in the sky, do they? Jun Moxie coldly replied. Green Hunter was standing on the side. However, she couldn't help but lash out when she heard this. How dare you have the gall to call us frogs in the well, Jun Moxie? Did I say that? Don't tell me that the two of you are such people. I apologize to young Mei if you've taken that seriously, Jun Moxie replied in a calm and collected manner. Stop, Green Hunter. The young master must have something up his sleeves if he's boasting so deliriously. And perhaps we are frogs peering out of a well. Mei Xue Yan's speech seemed worded to scold Green Hunter. But anyone who'd listened to her tone could tell that she clearly talked of Jun Moxie overestimating his capabilities. This story will be continued to chapter 491. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.